So I thought I'd do something quick about anger because a few people have said in discussions to me recently about feeling very angry and out of control with that emotion. And actually, I think sometimes we focus quite a lot on anxiety and depression, but what we don't sometimes remind people about is that anger is also a trait of the emotional brain. That part of the brain, which those of you who are familiar with hypnotherapy may know more about, that part of the brain always operates within 3 parameters, and those parameters are anger, anxiety, or depression, or it will operate within a combination of those parameters. And millions and millions or billions of years ago, when man was living a very different existence, responses that fell into one of those parameters would have perhaps felt a lot more appropriate than they do nowadays. So, for example, man going out to hunt and gather for his food in the morning and being faced with weather conditions that prevented him from going out would have made him feel quite frustrated possibly, or sad, and wasn't quite sure where the next meal was coming from for his family or his tribe. Those kind of emotions would have felt appropriate. If we think about examples of anxiety, again, those tribes going out to get their food for the day, if they were faced with a dangerous animal, that anxiety level would have gone up to try and warn them and protect them that they were in a dangerous situation. They would have had all of those chemical responses and the rush of the adrenaline and the rush of the cortisol to help them escape from a dangerous situation. All feels completely appropriate. Anger, if they were faced with wild animals or other wild tribesmen who were also out trying to hunt for food for their people and their tribe, then that feeling of anger would have served the purpose of making that person feel strong and able to defend themselves in that situation, because they needed that food to be able to provide for themselves and their tribe. So that anger would have helped them feel kind of pumped and strong and able to cope and able to manage. Again, that would have felt appropriate for that environment. But think now to the modern world that we are living in, which that part of the brain, by the way, hasn't adapted at all. It's not set up for the world in which we live today. And there are many times when the brain works perfectly well for us. It has a function and it has a purpose. But there are many situations where it can feel very inappropriate. So our anxiety levels can go through the roof if we get a bank statement through the post that we're not very comfortable with. It can go through the roof because we know that our boss has just called and said, can we have a chat at 2:00 next week? And we can start feeling very angry in certain situations that perhaps we know isn't appropriate at all. But anger is one of the traits of knowing that you are in that emotional part of the brain. So what we do in hypnotherapy is, it's not about ignoring those emotions at all. It's about being able to identify them. We talk a little about how that portrays itself for you. What's it preventing you from doing? What would you like to be able to do? What would you do if this wasn't a problem? Tell me more about that. Who would notice? Try and describe that to me in as much detail as possible. Once we've identified how those emotions work, how the brain works, what it floods you with, why it does it, why it encourages you to do it again, why do we fall into these patterns of behaviour, and then we start to be able to identify when that's happening for us, we can then ensure that we also then understand the coping strategies that we need to put in place that help us move away and move outside of being in that emotional brain back into the intellectual part of the brain. The intellectual bit of the brain is where we make those sensible decisions, where that practical, generally positive voice kicks in and says, right, okay, hang on. You don't need to be doing this. It's going to be okay. What you need is walk away, or what you need is to do blah, 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 whatever your coping strategies are. So So that's the kind of stuff that we talk about in hypnotherapy. So just wanted to touch on that very briefly. If you've got any questions, get in touch, and I look forward to hearing from you.